Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a regular long-term subscriber ask me to address this. And yeah, I thought it was a fantastic point, and it seems to be a point of controversy. And I'm going to talk about it while I get in my place of zen, relax, and make some stuff. Work on some arts and crafts. But yeah, so apparently BPAC has been calling natural bodybuilders noobs. And some people are offended by that, and they really shouldn't be. They should be offended by the fact that anybody has been convincing them over the years that they're going to be impressive by bodybuilding standards, including natural bodybuilding standards, so-called natural tested bodybuilding, without using drugs. Like, they should be upset that they've been lied to and marketed to and scammed all these years, and rather than be upset that BPAC is telling the truth. He's absolutely right. And by noobs, we don't mean noobs to working out. Who is his target audience? He writes programs for bodybuilders, trains bodybuilders. His entire interest is bodybuilding and bodybuilders. He doesn't seem to care about anything else. So from the standards of what he competes in, what he teaches, that's a 100% true statement. Nobody will ever be impressive by bodybuilding standards without drugs, so they will always be noobs. In fact, one of the few individuals I showed you guys who I thought was a true natty in bodybuilding, he even has a pro card in natural bodybuilding, Eric Helms. Everyone's like, well, he doesn't look impressive, but that's the best I could do. I'm just going to quit lifting. I mean, that's the sort of bullshit standard you guys have been sold, that a decade of training and being a natural pro with a PhD in nutrition, so you know more than most guys about it. He actually technically has a PhD in bodybuilding because his doctoral work was on competitive bodybuilders. That people were really like, well, that's not impressive at all. Exactly, it isn't. Not by bodybuilding standards. Because all of the standards that everyone has been given in this endeavor are from people on drugs, many of whom just claim to be natural. Drug testing doesn't work. It doesn't mean anything. So when BPAC says this to you, he's just being honest, and he's giving you his honest opinion as a professional in his field and in his industry, that if you're natural, doesn't matter how many years you've been doing it, if your endeavor is bodybuilding, competitive bodybuilding, you will always be a noob. You will never be impressive by those standards. And I don't want this to come across as some sort of pro-drug video, because it's not, because I'm not even pro-bodybuilding. I don't particularly like it. I'm not a fan of it. But I've been in this game long enough to know, and I've observed the human body long enough to know what it is and isn't capable of. And he is right. People should be happy that there's finally someone being honest, who's a big name in the industry, calling them noobs. Well, they are. Because that is oftentimes what defines someone who's advanced, the amount of stuff they're on. In fact, that is, outside of genetics, the number one determining factor, because the truth is, we know, based upon numerous studies, that once drugs come into the mix, the type and amount of drugs that people take actually has more impact on how much muscle they gain than how they actually train. It's debated as to if the training even matters that much, if they even have to train at all, or if they could just sit around and continue to gain muscle on large enough doses for months or years on end. So there's no conclusive evidence whatsoever that how someone trains once they go on hefty amounts of these drugs even affects how much muscle they gain at all. Meaning rep ranges, volumes, periodization, all that seems to matter for strength, but it might not matter at all for overall muscle mass. So at what point do you have any other conclusion on that? Meaning that becomes the most important variable in an advanced bodybuilder. It is the most important variable, because again, the training styles vary dramatically, enormously. We've seen many examples of completely opposite ends of the spectrum training styles, yet the guys still become champions in that endeavor. It's just genetics and drugs, and oftentimes it's genetic response to drugs. That's all bodybuilding really is at the end of the day. And I mean, granted, I hate to use Boston Lloyd as an example because he's not the best at it, but even he says he doesn't change anything other than his drug stack between bulking and cutting. He doesn't even change his diet for the most part. So, when you see guys admitting to that, what are you supposed to think? I think BPAC is just calling it like it is. I don't necessarily like the guy's methods. I don't like his approach. But when he's saying that, he's telling you guys the truth, and he's being... I think people need that truth. They need to understand if they're going to go into this endeavor, they're going to go into bodybuilding, they need to not buy into the bullshit and the hype. Because people have been sold a bunch of nonsense by the supplement industry that if they just train hard enough and buy the right products, that they'll achieve their potential, and they might look like the guy on the cover of the magazine or this bodybuilder or that bodybuilder they endorse, but they won't. It's all a lie, and he's at least telling you the truth. That if you decide to go into bodybuilding, if that's what you decide you really want to do, then you're going to have to use drugs to make it. Even in the natural stuff, to really excel at it or get anywhere in it, or to be truly advanced. And you might have to use a lot of them. So I think the more important message there is, rather than saying, okay, everyone go on drugs, that's not what it is. He's letting you know the truth so that you can decide ahead of time before you buy into the Kool-Aid, because that's the problem. That's the big problem there. Too many guys don't know that when they get involved in it, and then they get their heart set on it. They become obsessed with it, and once something becomes your life obsession, if you haven't been told the full truth about it or you don't understand that, you're going to pay whatever price comes down the road that you weren't aware was there before you started, once it becomes your obsession and your dream. By him telling people that ahead of time, it lets them, just like what I try to tell people, the same thing. I think it sends the same message of telling people, look, you need to decide not that, hey, if I'm going to bodybuild and I need to start using drugs. No, you need to decide if you're not willing to use the drugs, or you're not willing to use large amounts of the drugs, don't get involved in the bodybuilding. You better make that decision before you decide or get it set in your head that you're going to jump into that endeavor. I personally don't recommend that you get into that endeavor because I think it's unhealthy. I think it's risk-taking. I think even the cutting, even without the drugs, is horrifically bad for you. In fact, I know it is. We got plenty of data showing it's terrible for you. It will harm you. And then the copious amounts of drugs can harm you on top of it. So it's double-fold of why I don't really approve of it. But by that same token, I'm not about to tell a bunch of grown men and women how to live their lives. Your body, it's your life. Not mine. It's not my choice to make. Your choice to make. But people need to be making educated choices, not choices fueled by an industry's bullshit and marketing and telling them lies. That's the problem. What you need to be told is that and he is being honest with that, with the noob thing. What people aren't being told, and here's the truth, if you go into bodybuilding as a serious endeavor, you will have to use drugs, or you're not going to make it. And you might have to use a lot of drugs. On top of that, you will probably never make a living doing it. Even if you blast pro levels of drugs, you still will probably never make enough money to live on doing this endeavor. It will probably cost you more money to be involved in it than you're going to make back off of it. It's actually going to be an expensive lifestyle. That is why the prostitution rate is so insanely high among bodybuilders. That's why they have to sell out the supplement companies. That's why they have to lie and bullshit, because their lifestyle is expensive and not financially rewarding. And everyone says, well, you're wrong because this person or that person. It's like, but they're less than 0.1% of people involved. Not even close to 1% of people who compete in bodybuilding can actually make a living at it. Think about that for a minute. Out of all these people who dedicate their life to it and obsess with it and even go on the drugs, not even 1% of them can actually pay their bills and survive off of the bodybuilding. Or anything bodybuilding related, meaning sponsorships, not just winnings from shows, but even their sponsorships and stuff. You're not going to make a living doing it, and you're going to have to use drugs. Statistically speaking, that's the reality. That's the truth for 99% of people who get involved in it. And if you can live with that fact and you say, well, this is my obsession, this is what's going to make me happy, I don't care if I'm broke from doing it, I don't care if I have to suck dick to buy my drugs and to pay for the lifestyle, I love this so much and I'm going to do that, I don't care. Well, that's okay, you've made an informed decision, that's your choice to make. I applaud you making an informed decision with your life. But if you honestly think you're going to get involved in this and get anywhere without the drugs, without finding some way to afford the expensive lifestyle, and if you honestly think you're going to make a living on it, that's delusional for the vast majority of people who decide to do so. So on this case, I don't necessarily like BPAC always, but at least this time he's keeping it real, and I've got to applaud his honesty there. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.